So we are one day removed from the official start of free agent frenzy, and there is a lot to unpack when it comes to the Vegas Golden Knights. First of all, we got to talk about some of the major trades that went down before July 1st. The first of those being the trade that is sending Erik Haula to the Carolina Hurricanes in exchange for prospect Nicholas Waugh and a conditional fifth in 2021. Now, I have to be honest, this move surprised me a little bit. I kind of figured that Cody Eakin would be the one to go and not Erik Haula, partly because of the larger cap hit, but also because Haula seems to be in a position to have a major bounce back year. At the same time, he also only had 1 year left on his deal, and it was very unlikely we were going to be able to afford him after this season anyway. For Carolina, this is a major get. It immediately, in my opinion, elevates their top six situation and really puts them in a position to do some major damage next season. The second major move to happen prior to July 1st was Colin Miller being sent to Buffalo in exchange for a second-round pick in 2021 and a fifth-round pick in 2022. This move was much less of a surprise. I think a lot of people figured that Colin was probably on his way out after this season, not because of anything he did wrong, but just because of the wealth of defensive prospects that the team has, and it looking like we were going to have to move some people in order to clear cap space, especially after the Mark Stone deal went down. This is a great move for the Buffalo Sabres. It provides their defense an immediate shot in the arm, and the idea of potentially Dahlin and Miller being paired up together on defense is pretty awesome if you're a Sabres fan and pretty concerning if you're a fan of any other team in that division. Now, do either of these trades make the Golden Knights better in the short term? Absolutely not. They don't. But long term, I do feel that the team has enough depth to justify both moves. It's especially interesting with the Miller trade because now you've essentially got a roster spot open and you've got some very good defensemen getting ready to compete for it. Guys like Jimmy Schultz, guys like Nick Hague, guys like Zach Whitecloud. And that's going to be really, really interesting to watch. So now that we've talked about the major moves prior to July 1st, let's talk about what went down yesterday. As you may have expected, we did see some of our players leave in unrestricted free agency, the most prominent being Pierre, Edouard, Bellemare, and Ryan Carpenter. Bellemare signed a 2-year, $1.8 million per year deal with the Colorado Avalanche, while Carpenter signed a 3-year, $1 million per year deal with the Chicago Blackhawks. Losing Bellemare, I'm not going to lie, is kind of a bummer. He is fantastic on the penalty kill. He's one of the best penalty killers in the league. And even though he is a fourth liner, he's fantastic in that role and has been a big part of what's made the fourth line so successful on the team the last 2 seasons. That all being said, the fact that they were willing to let him walk in free agency tells me they're confident at this point that Cody Glass is ready, which is very, very exciting news. Ryan Carpenter's story is a particularly interesting one. 2 years ago, he's put on waivers by the San Jose Sharks. A lot of people had written him off. We picked him up on waivers, and he proceeded to just really come through in a big way for us and provided a lot of depth in that inaugural season. While I'm sorry to see him go, it's nice to see him get rewarded with a multi-year deal on a team where he's likely to see a lot more ice time. 2 familiar names that are returning to the team next season are Tomas Nosek and Brandon Pirri. Nosek has signed a 1-year, $1 million deal to remain with the team, and Pirri has signed a 2-year deal with an annual value of $775,000. Nosek re-signing seemed pretty much like a given. A lot of people are surprised by Pirri re-signing. I think a lot of people assumed he would move on to another team where he was going to see more ice time. But to me, re-signing Pirri makes sense. At the end of the day, the guy scores goals. That's all he does. It's nice having someone like that in your back pocket, even if he isn't going to be necessarily seeing a ton of ice time. Having him as an option, I think, is a great asset to have, especially at that price. Which brings us to the major bone of contention for most Golden Knights fans right now, which is Nikita Gusev. Jesse Granger from The Athletic reported July 1st that Nikita Gusev's camp and the Golden Knights are apparently still very far apart in terms of negotiations. The asking price, according to the Russian press, is apparently $4 million per year for 2 years. They've agreed on the term. What they can't agree on is the money. The Golden Knights offer apparently came in at around half of what he's asking for. So the obvious answer on paper would be simply to trade him. Now the question is, if you trade Gusev, where does that leave the third line? Do you stick with Tuch, Eakin, and Pirri? Do you run Nosek on the wing with Pirri as the alternate? Now, you can run Nosek as a center on the fourth line if needed. I think it's safe to say that this was not plan A for the team going into this, so it'll be interesting to see how they handle it moving forward.